Speak. Do you still dare to defy me? I held the handle of a soft whip in my hand, sitting atop a man's body. The man beneath me, jet black hair tied with a jade crown, sharp features, and eyes so seductive they could melt anyone's resolve, was none other than Crown Prince Cassian Wolf. At this moment, his hands were bound tightly with the very whip I held. Cassian looked up at me and said with a half-smile, "My beloved consort is fiercer than I expected. Truly eye-opening." I yanked the whip back with a sharp flick. It lashed across his flawless face, leaving a red mark with a faint bead of blood seeping out. I gritted my teeth. "Consider it a gift, are you pleased?" Cassian turned his head slightly, a complex glint flashing in his deep, obsidian eyes. Then he smiled faintly. "Pleased. Of course I'm pleased when it comes from my beloved consort." This was the scene on the night of my wedding with the Crown Prince. But let's make one thing very clear. I'm not his consort. I'm a man. I'm Sebastian Drake, son of the mighty general of the frontier. My sister and I, Serena Drake, grew up on the battlefield and rarely returned to the capital. Who would have thought that just half a month ago, the Emperor himself would issue a decree forcing a marriage between my sister and the Crown Prince? Our whole family panicked. Even from the borders, we'd heard of Cassian Wolf's terrifying reputation. Cold, cruel, and temperamental. They say he raises assassins in secret, eliminates his enemies in court without mercy, and never shows an ounce of kindness. And with the Prime Minister at odds with him, marrying into the prince's household was basically walking into a lion's den. So after much frantic discussion, my family came up with this genius plan. Let me marry him in my sister's place. My father clutched my hands earnestly. "Son, you and your sister are twins. You look nearly identical. No one will notice." Every cell in my body screamed, "No! This is insane! I'm a man. What if I get exposed? What about my life?" My fearless sister, of all people, pretended to wipe away a tear. "Brother, didn't you always say the capital has better air and softer beds than the dusty frontier? Isn't this your chance? You take my place in the palace. I'll take yours on the battlefield. Win-win." My father chimed in, sealing my fate. "Relax, it's only temporary. Just observe him. If he truly is as vicious as the rumors say, I'll risk everything to get you out. You're trained in martial arts. You won't go down easily. And if it turns out the rumors are false, we'll quietly swap you back." And so the once proud young general, me, was paraded into the capital in a bridal sedan chair. On the way, I heard the palace maids whispering, "Let's see how long this new bride lasts. They say the prince is a killer. Bodies come out of his palace every day." That's not even the worst of it. I heard he's into certain kinks. On our wedding night, I finally met Cassian Wolf. And yes, just as the rumors said, his face was dangerously beautiful. But then he came into the room holding a whip and asked me if I wanted to try something exciting. I smiled sweetly, leaned in close, and threw him over my shoulder, slamming him to the floor. I straddled him and said, "Young master, no, this consort loves exciting things the most." He looked up at me, stunned. His entire expression changed. Ever since that night, Cassian Wolf had been completely tamed by me. When I said I didn't want to share a bed with him, he obediently moved to sleep in the side chamber. I had just returned from the frontier and couldn't stomach the rich palace food, so he personally instructed the kitchen to prepare dishes I liked. Every day it was my love this, my love that. Even his secret guards were dumbfounded. The once proud and untouchable crown prince, acting like this? Only I knew the truth. He got this way after I beat some sense into him. All that talk about him being twisted and cruel? Please. A good thrashing works wonders. I was just about to send a secret letter to my father, telling him it was safe for me and Serena to switch back. But then, I saw something that changed everything. I accidentally walked in on a scene that lived up to every brutal rumor about Cassian Wolf. No one was allowed near the council chamber during Cassian's meetings. But I wasn't just anyone. The moment I approached, I heard screaming from inside, along with the unmistakable sound of bodies being slammed into hard surfaces. Peeking through the door, I saw Cassian gripping a man by the hair and slamming his head against the edge of a table. Blood pooled on the floor. Several bodies already lay motionless nearby, likely long dead. Cassian wore a smile, cruel, almost seductive, with a gleam in his eyes that sent chills down my spine. His pale, elegant fingers were soaked in blood as he asked, voice like a demon from the underworld, Besides you, who else is working for the Prime Minister? The man coughed up blood and muttered weakly, I'd rather die than talk. Cassian chuckled softly, then crushed the man beneath his foot. Without hesitation, he drew a sword and ran it clean through his chest. With a hint of mock pity, he said, You've been hiding by my side for so long. What a waste. Since you won't speak, I'll just send you off properly. Next one. A few masked guards dragged another man into the room. The moment he saw the corpses and the pools of blood, the man turned pale and vomited on the spot. He dropped to his knees before Cassian, begging, Your Highness, please, I'll talk! Just don't kill me! Cassian offered him a calm smile. Speak, and I'll spare you. The man stammered out a few names. I didn't recognize them, but from the satisfied smile on Cassian's lips, I could tell it was exactly what he wanted. He nodded and ordered the man to be taken away. The traitor barely managed a sigh of relief when a blade suddenly pierced straight through his throat. Eyes wide in disbelief, he turned to look at Cassian. Blood gushed from his neck like a fountain. You? He collapsed in seconds, dead. My entire body went cold. Even if he acted gentle and affectionate around me, this version of Cassian Wolf was dangerous. There was no way I could let my sister end up with a man like this. And if he ever found out I was a man, that my whole family had deceived him, what would he do? I didn't have time to think. Cassian casually pulled out a silk cloth to wipe the blood from his hands. One of his men asked what to do with the bodies. Without blinking, Cassian said, Cut off their heads and deliver them to the Prime Minister. Say it's a gift from me. Just then he turned around and locked eyes with me. Moonlight streamed in behind him, highlighting the bloodstains on his hands. The sight was chilling. We stared at each other in silence. His gaze was unreadable, but his movements quickened as he wiped his hands. Then he gave me a soft smile. What brings my beloved consort here? Originally, I had come to confess everything, to tell him I was actually a man, and it was time for Serena to return. But now? No chance. So I lied. I couldn't sleep. Just out for a walk. Cassian walked toward me. I instinctively took a step back, hand moving to the hidden dagger tucked into my robe. If he tried to silence me here and now, I'd fight him with everything I had. But instead, he pinched my cheek and smiled. If you can't sleep, I'll keep you company. Don't wander alone again. I just cleaned up some traitors. I wouldn't want to scare you. What kind of move was that? My face burned hot with embarrassment, a wave of shame washing over me. I'm a man, damn it. Who just lets someone pinch their face like that? For several days straight, I found myself staring into the mirror, deeply troubled. Sure, I looked a lot like Serena, and my features had always leaned a little on the feminine side. With makeup, even palace servants couldn't tell the difference. But the problem was, my height wasn't exactly something I could hide. Every outfit of Serena's had to be custom-altered several sizes larger just to fit me. Besides, how long could I keep this charade up? I might have dodged the wedding night, but what about next week? Next month? What am I supposed to do? Avoid sharing a bed with the Crown Prince for the rest of my life? Please, Dad, come rescue your son. I let out a long sigh and turned my gaze toward the window, only to find myself lost in memories of a girl I once saw, over 10 years ago. I was just 10 when my father brought me to the capital for an official report, and in the palace, I met her. She was about my age, with a face so ethereal, I could have sworn she had stepped out of a dream. She was being bullied by a few other kids, and of course, I jumped in and fought them off. The two of us spent 3 days together in the palace. Before I left to return to the frontier, I kissed her cheek. I told her I'd come back for her. The stupid part? I never even found out whose daughter she was. All I remembered was her name, Xinyan. Such a beautiful name. She was my first love. Over the years, I'd seen countless stunning women on the battlefield and in the border towns, but none of them ever came close to her in my heart. Later, when my father returned to the palace again, I begged him to look into her for me. But he came back saying there was no girl by that name in any of the noble houses. And to be honest, agreeing to switch places with Serena, part of it was because of her. I thought, maybe if I came to the capital again, I could find her. Just maybe. Then came my chance. The Empress Dowager's birthday banquet was approaching, and as the crown princess, I was expected to attend alongside Cassian Wolf. Hope stirred in my chest. If she was here in the capital, she would likely attend. All I wanted was to see her once more. On the day of the banquet, I walked beside Cassian, barely listening to the courtiers. My eyes constantly drifted toward the section where the noble ladies were gathered. I scanned them one by one. That wasn't her. That one either. None of them looked right. Even if her face had faded slightly in my memory, there's no way she'd look ordinary. Just then, the Imperial Censor Lord Wen approached, flanked by his family. I wasn't paying much attention until I heard a soft, sweet voice speak up. "Greetings, Your Highness. Greetings, Your High Consort." I looked up and saw her. A stunning young woman with delicate features and expressive eyes, standing just behind Lord Wen. She had to be his daughter. And for a moment, I thought I was imagining it, but when she looked at Cassian, there was a faint blush on her cheeks. Cassian's voice cut through my thoughts. "It's been a while. You've grown even more beautiful, Xinyan." "Xinyan? Xinyan? Did I misremember her name all these years?" Suddenly, the girl turned to me, confused by my stunned expression. "Your Highness, did I say something wrong?" I quickly shook my head. "No, not at all. Forgive my boldness, Lady Xinyan. Do you happen to have a sister?" She smiled politely. "No, Your Highness. I only have one elder brother. No sisters." Disappointment settled heavy in my chest. I lowered my gaze, no longer interested in the banquet. It wasn't her. I must have been mistaken. I was still lost in thought when I suddenly felt Cassian's fingers brush against the inside of my palm. I flinched and snapped back to reality. He leaned closer. "What's wrong?" I forced a small smile and shook my head. "It's nothing." But in my heart, a question lingered. Could it really be that the girl from back then was actually Wen Xinyan? It didn't take long for me to learn the truth about Wen Xinyan, from the lips of noble ladies who loved nothing more than gossip. Apparently, she and Cassian Wolf were childhood sweethearts. She had admired him from a young age, even secretly embroidered a handkerchief for him once. Everyone had assumed she'd become the crown princess. But out of nowhere, the emperor announced a different marriage, my sister's name, not hers. When Xinyan found out, she swore she would marry Cassian or no one at all. And just like that, my heart plummeted into an abyss. Not only could I not reveal myself, I'd accidentally stolen the man she loved. I was the villain in her story. I sat alone near a garden pavilion, staring blankly at my reflection in the lake. My current appearance, not quite male, not quite female, only deepened my sense of despair. Suddenly, a faint fragrance of orchids drifted through the air. I turned around, and there she was. Wen Xinyan, smiling sweetly at me, her expression gentle. "I hope I'm not disturbing your highness," she asked softly. I quickly waved my hands. "No, not at all." She stepped closer, her gaze warm and sincere. "I was raised in the palace since childhood, and played with the crown prince often. When I heard he was getting married, I was truly happy for him. And today, upon meeting your highness, I feel such a connection. If your highness doesn't mind, may I call you sister?" That single word, sister, shattered what was left of my heart. Raised in the palace, not of royal blood, she had to be Xian, the girl from my childhood. And now I had just found my first love again. Only for her to call me sister. Who could possibly understand this level of heartache? Trying not to break down, I nodded with a forced smile. "Of course." She beamed, gently taking my hand. "Wonderful. Then I'll call you sister from now on." I looked at our joined hands, dazed, trying to reconcile her smile with the memory of that icy little girl from years ago, the one who'd only ever smiled like sunlight breaking through a storm. I asked quietly, "Have you been in the palace for over 10 years? My brother visited with our father back then. Maybe you crossed paths?" She tilted her head in thought. "It's possible. There were always children running about, but I honestly don't remember clearly." Disappointment hit me like a wave. "I see." She smiled again and leaned in closer. "Sister, may I offer a word of caution? The palace isn't as peaceful as it looks. Wealth and favor don't always last. Being close to the crown prince means you must be extra careful." Before I could fully digest her words, a servant arrived to escort me back to the main hall. The banquet was about to begin, and the emperor had arranged something special. A sacred beast gifted by a foreign kingdom. A majestic, three-eyed white tiger, meant to symbolize strength and prosperity. Some nobles gasped at the sight, but the beastmaster assured everyone that the tiger had been tamed. "Gentle as a lamb," he said, "perfectly safe." With its massive paws chained, the tiger obeyed every command. "Sit." circle, even offering its paw like a handshake. Fascinated, I leaned forward as the Beastmaster added, "The three-eyed white tiger is a sign of great fortune. Let everyone touch it and receive a blessing." When the tiger gently licked the Emperor's hand, he laughed in delight. Then came the Empress Dowager, the Queen, the concubines. By now, all my earlier gloom had vanished. I was practically bouncing in place, eager to try a fist bump with the big guy. Cassian stepped forward. The tiger gave a low, rumbling growl, but did nothing more. Then came my turn. Just as I reached out to touch its paw, something shocking happened. The tiger sniffed me once, then suddenly roared and lunged. It all happened too fast. Before I could react, someone threw themselves over me. Screams echoed all around. I felt the weight of a body press me down, followed by a painful grunt and the warm splash of blood across my face. Cassian. He had shielded me. The Beastmaster panicked. Nobles scattered. Guards screamed, "Protect the Crown Prince!" But the white tiger had latched onto Cassian's leg, jaws locked, refusing to let go. It wanted him dead, and me next. The guards hesitated, unable to strike without risking harm, and Cassian, despite the pain, clung tightly to me, refusing to let the beast reach me. That was it. I snapped. I shoved Cassian aside, snatched a sword from a trembling servant, and charged. The tiger roared and lunged again. I slashed at its belly, but its paw knocked me back like I was nothing. I rolled midair, landed hard, then leapt straight onto its back. Grabbing the thick fur on its neck with one hand, I punched it repeatedly with the other. The entire banquet stared in horror as the Crown Princess, yes, me, fought a tiger barehanded, each punch landing with bone-cracking force. I'd hunted wolves on the frontier since I was a child. Wolves used to run at the sight of me. You think I'd be scared of a big cat? The guards scrambled to offer me weapons, but the tiger suddenly bolted, with me still riding on its back. It twisted and thrashed, trying to throw me off. Even with my training, I couldn't hold on forever. Just as I was about to lose my grip, an arrow pierced the tiger's third eye. It let out a final roar before collapsing. I rolled off its back, gasping, then looked up to see Cassian, covered in blood, still clutching the bow he'd used to shoot the beast while it was moving. The guards swarmed in to finish the job. Cassian dropped the bow, half his robe soaked in red. I rushed to his side. Before I could speak, he looked at me and asked weakly, "Are you hurt?" I blinked. "You're bleeding. I'm not. Just look at you." "Hey, hey!" Before I could finish, Cassian collapsed into my arms. The day of the palace banquet ended in utter chaos. No one could explain why the perfectly tame three-eyed tiger suddenly went berserk. The Emperor was furious, and came within an inch of having the Beastmaster's head struck off. Yet from that moment on, a new legend spread throughout the palace and beyond. The frail, gentle Crown Prince and his brave, tiger-fighting Crown Princess. Because Cassian Wolf had shielded me, his back and leg were torn and bruised by the tiger's claws. One more swipe and it would have been fatal. Moved by his sacrifice, I volunteered to care for him during his convalescence. I quickly regretted that decision. How could Cassian be so needy? "Consort, the weather is so lovely. Would you wheel me outside for a stroll?" "Consort? Today I simply must have yang mei lichi soup, the kind you make." "Consort, consort, consort!" Being at his beck and call was one thing, but caring for him inevitably involved physical contact, and his hands were anything but innocent. If I helped him out of bed, he'd wrap his arms around my waist and murmur, "Consort, your waist is so slender." Change his bandages and he'd stroke my hand, sighing, "Consort, your fingers are so graceful." "Are you harassing me?" "But aren't we husband and wife?" Something was seriously wrong. Wasn't I supposed to be dealing with a bloodthirsty madman? One afternoon, he lay on the bed, propped on one elbow, giving me a flirtatious look. "Consort, may I have a kiss?" I'd had enough. Slamming my hand down on the table mid-pour, I snapped, "Cassian Wolf, enough! You're injured, not paralyzed. I'm not your maid." He narrowed those impossibly handsome eyes and pouted. "But consort, you promised to care for me. Have you already broken your vow?" Gritting my teeth, I shot back, "I'll pour your water. But a kiss is out." He fluttered his eyelashes. "Then could you at least help me roll over?" Sighing, I bent to lift him, only to misjudge my strength. He tensed, and before I knew it, I fell into his arms. My chest pressed against his. Our eyes locked. He whispered, "They all say I'm so weak, yet my Crown Princess is strong enough to carry me. That doesn't seem right, does it?" I felt my face burn. Words tangled in my throat as I blurted, "Cassian, are you asking to be whipped again?" He stared at me, then winced in sudden pain. Alarmed, I asked, "What's wrong? You knocked against my wound just now. It's torn open. Roll onto your back and I'll show you." "Consort," he murmured, leaning closer, then blurted out, "Why? Are you so flat-chested?" He and I stared at each other in stunned silence. Then, without hesitation, I slapped him across the face. Cassian clutched his cheek, looking utterly shameless. "But consort, once my wounds heal, will we finally consummate our marriage?" Seeing that predatory gleam in his eyes sent a shiver down my spine. I can't keep this secret. I really can't. That night, I ordered several pots of wine. Liquid courage in hand, I made up my mind I was going to tell Cassian Wolf the truth, that I was, in fact, a man. Sitting alone on the rooftop under the moonlight, I practiced my confession over and over. "Look, I didn't mean to deceive you, but your reputation wasn't exactly reassuring. No, too blunt. Hey man, just chill, all right? I know this sucks, but once I swap back with my sister, I'll still be your brother-in-law. Cool? Let's just forget all this ever happened." After several rounds of rehearsal, I started feeling more and more wronged. I didn't want this either, okay? It was my dad who forced me. I already have someone I like. Suddenly, a voice interrupted from the shadows. "Who is it?" I froze. A distant memory came rushing back. The ethereal, unreachable girl I once met long ago. I couldn't help but smile faintly to myself. Xinyan. She said her name was Xinyan. But the moment the name left my lips, I froze. My smile disappeared. My whole body went stiff, blood turning cold. I turned, slowly, like I was caught in a nightmare. Cassian. He was sitting right there beside me, those midnight black eyes fixed on mine, his smile unreadable in the moonlight. He sat casually on the rooftop, as if he'd been there the whole time. The wind suddenly felt icy. He arched an eyebrow. "So, my dear consort is actually a man?" I gritted my teeth. "Yes, I admit it. I'm sorry I lied, but I am 100% male. And this consort is in love with a girl named Xinyan?" "Yes," Cassian smiled. "Well then, I am Xinyan." I nearly choked on my own spit. He said, "What now?" My drunkenness vanished in an instant as I stared into his eyes, trying to tell if he was joking, but he wasn't. His expression was dead serious. "What?" Cassian removed the jade crown from his head, and his ink-black hair spilled over his shoulders like silk under the moonlight. His sharp, elegant profile looked carved from marble. His gaze, soft, steady, and strangely familiar, met mine. Then softly, he murmured, "Will you still come back to find me someday?" Those words, they echoed from the past, from the young girl with misty eyes who once asked me the exact same thing. "Will you come back for me?" In that moment, the face before me and the memory in my heart overlapped perfectly. How had I never realized? I stumbled to my feet in disbelief. No way, Xinyan was a girl. I took a step back, misjudged my balance, and almost fell. Cassian grabbed my arm quickly. "Careful." I yanked my hand away. He sighed, pressing a palm to his forehead, as if recalling a long-forgotten story. "When I was young, I hadn't grown into my features yet. I looked rather feminine, so my mother often dressed me up as a girl. But I never said I was one." "But you said your name was Xinyan. Would you have spoken to me if I'd said I was the crown prince?" he countered. "When you asked for my name, I happened to be standing beneath a vine of Xinyan blossoms, so I gave you that." "You're unbelievable." Cassian stepped closer, now just inches from my face. I could feel the warmth of his breath against my cheek. "What more do you want to know, consort? You were the one who kissed me and promised to return. Isn't that exactly what you've done?" My words caught in my throat. "So, you knew I was a man all along?" Cassian's smile curved mischievously. "From the moment you pinned me down and straddled me, General Drake, I knew exactly who you were. What does it feel like when the first love you've cherished for over 10 years turns out to be a man? Worse yet, your husband? Well, now I know." That night, I don't even remember how I got down from the rooftop. All I know is I panicked and ran like a complete mess. Ever since then, I've been terrified of seeing Cassian Wolf. I sent carrier pigeons to my sister every single day, begging her to come swap back with me. Her replies? Always the same two maddening words, "No rush." No rush? I'm already sizzling like a bug in boiling oil, and she's still telling me not to rush. Cassian, on the other hand, acted like nothing had happened, still calling me his beloved consort every other sentence, still ordering me around like always. But me? I started avoiding him. How could he say all those shameless, flirtatious, mortifying things, knowing full well that I'm a man? Eventually, I stopped even pretending. I ditched the women's clothing and changed back into my own gear, then marched off to the training grounds to practice archery. After all, the secret was out. Why bother keeping up the act? Now, archery was never my strong suit. My father always said my temper was too hot for a steady aim. I always argued that on the battlefield, one spear could take down dozens. Why waste time learning how to shoot a damn twig? But right now, all I had was this bow and a raging storm in my chest. Arrow after arrow missed. The more impatient I got, the worse I aimed. And then suddenly, 2 hands reached from behind and firmly corrected my grip. I froze. "Lower your hands a bit," Cassian's voice. His hands adjusted my posture slowly, precisely. My tense shoulders began to settle. "Calm your heart. Focus. Just aim for the center of the target. Forget everything else." Forget everything else? He was standing right next to me. How was I supposed to forget him? He held my arm steady. I could hear nothing but his quiet breathing. But I still couldn't do it. I lowered the bow, turned toward him, and met his eyes. "What's wrong?" he asked. I took a deep breath. "Cassian, look at me. I'm clearly a man. I'm not your consort. No one in the capital even knows who I really am. My sister is on her way to switch back. You don't have to keep acting like I'm your crown princess anymore." Cassian was quiet for a long time before he finally said, "You are the one I married with full rights and a royal decree. Why should I let anyone replace you?" I grew flustered. "Don't you get it? I'm not real. I'm a fake. I'm a man." Cassian's gaze didn't waver. "Do you really think I didn't know who you were? Sebastian Drake? 10 years ago you kissed me on the cheek and said you'd come back and marry me. I never forgot." My breath caught. What are you saying?" Cassian looked me in the eye, speaking each word clearly. "I'm saying this, Sebastian. I'm in love with you." The world went silent around us. I let out an awkward, disbelieving laugh. "Impossible. If Xinyan had been a woman and she stood in front of you now, what would you do?" "If she wasn't married," I said quietly, "I'd marry her." "And if Xinyan was a man, that's where you draw the line?" Cassian took a step closer, then another. I had nowhere left to retreat. He exhaled softly. "But I am Xinyan, and that's not enough for you?" I had once promised myself, if I ever found Xinyan again, I'd never let her down. And truthfully, I didn't dislike Cassian. But this was just too much to process all at once. I gently pushed him away. "Let me think about it." Cassian gave me plenty of time to think. He had only one condition: don't avoid him anymore. Luckily, he seemed especially busy lately. I didn't see him for several days, and to be honest, I felt relieved. With him gone, I went back to my usual routine, eating, drinking, waiting for a letter from home. But nothing came. No updates, no replies. Then one day, when I was bored enough to sneak out of the palace, I overheard a few handmaidens whispering behind the garden wall. "Honestly, our crown princess is heartless. Her father's been thrown into prison and she's still acting like nothing happened." "Don't say that. His Highness gave strict orders. No one's allowed to mention the general's imprisonment to her. If she doesn't know, better for everyone. If the prince finds out we told her, we're dead." I froze in place. What did they just say? My father? In prison? I burst out from the corner, startling them. "What did you just say? My father's been imprisoned. For what? What happened?" The 2 maids went pale as ghosts. "Please forgive us, Your Highness. We don't know the full story. We just overheard bits and pieces. We swear." So that's why no letters had come from home. My father. Something had happened to him. I rushed toward the council chamber, where Cassian was in the middle of a strategy meeting with his advisors. I didn't care about protocol. I stormed inside. Everyone looked at me in shock, except for Cassian, who remained calm. "What brings you here?" "My father. What's going on with him?" As soon as I spoke the words, the expressions in the room darkened. Clearly, this was exactly what they had been discussing. Cassian saw that he could no longer hide it. He told me everything. A while ago, the Emperor had summoned my father to the capital. But for reasons unknown, my father didn't come. After being summoned multiple times and still not appearing, the Prime Minister, Cassian's longtime political enemy, accused him of defying imperial orders and amassing power on the frontier. So my father was arrested and escorted back to the capital. His military command was stripped. Cassian had sent people to investigate. He found out that the 3 imperial messengers sent to summon my father had been killed en route, most likely assassinated by the Prime Minister's faction. The Prime Minister had been at odds with Cassian for years, scheming behind the throne to dominate the court. He was the same man who'd planted a spy in Cassian's residence, the one Cassian executed not long ago. "Then what are you waiting for?" I shouted. "Tell the Emperor the truth. My father is innocent. He's being framed." One of the advisors shook his head. "Your Highness, it's not that simple. The Emperor arranged this marriage between you and the Crown Prince because his power has already been weakened. He hoped General Drake's support would help the prince ascend the throne. He knows what's going on, but his hands are tied." Another chimed in. "The Prime Minister is staging the entire show. If His Highness defends General Drake right now, it would only confirm suspicions. Your father is his father-in-law, and this concerns military control. If the Crown Prince intervenes, it would look like a rebellion." Cassian was silent for a long time. Then he said quietly, "I didn't want to hide this from you. I've just been trying to come up with a plan that won't backfire." My heart turned cold. A flawless plan? In this world, there's no such thing. It's just a way to protect yourself when disaster strikes. I turned and walked out. I knew Cassian's journey to this point hadn't been easy. Before I married, my father told me that he agreed to this marriage not only because of the Emperor's order. He understood all too well how much Cassian had suffered, how his mother had been assassinated by hired blades, and how the Prime Minister had tried to suppress and sabotage him for years. If my father stood aside now, the royal family would truly fall into ruin. I knew I shouldn't expect anything from Cassian, and yet, deep down, I hoped he would do something. But no, I'd have to handle this myself. Cassian chased after me and grabbed my hand. "Sebastian, I can't act just yet, but if you believe in me, trust me just this once. I promise your father will be safe." I shook him off. "No need. I don't want my father's fate tied to yours, Cassian." I looked him straight in the eye and said, "Let's end this. Divorce me." Cassian stared at me in disbelief. "Why would I divorce you? You don't trust me." I shook my head. "I'm a man. My father is in danger. How could I just sit back and wait for someone else to save him?" For a moment, I saw a flash of hurt in his eyes. "You think I'm someone else? Just someone?" I met his gaze, firm and unwavering. "Please, Your Highness, let me go. If you release me, I'll finally be free." And I meant it. If he divorced me, I wouldn't have to fear seeing him again. I wouldn't have to keep grappling with emotions I didn't understand. Cassian's voice dropped low. "But I like you." I steeled myself and replied, "Your Highness, I've made up my mind. I don't like you. What I had was a fondness for the girl I once knew, Xinyan. Even if she were standing before me now, I'm not sure I'd still love her. Feelings can't be forced, so please, let go." I didn't look at him the whole time I spoke. I didn't dare. Not at his eyes, not at his face. Silence stretched between us so long that it almost felt like time had stopped. And then finally I heard him say in a soft, distant voice, "All right. Thank you." Just as I finally mustered the courage to glance back at him, he had already turned and walked away. Cassian personally wrote our divorce decree, a clean break, no more ties, wishing each other well. He explained everything to the Emperor himself and arranged for me to leave the palace early. From that moment on, I never saw him again. All communication came through his attendants. When I left the palace, I had already changed back into my men's clothing. I slipped out the back gate. No one came to see me off. I knew he didn't want to see me, and honestly, maybe it was better that way. Still, I couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. He was strange like that. When he liked you, it felt like he couldn't get enough of you. But once he let go, he didn't even want a final glance. But none of that mattered now. What mattered was saving my father. I was no longer a crown princess. I was Sebastian Drake, the young general, and I had a war to win. To save my father, I practically visited every one of his old allies, but they all knew the right chancellor was the one pulling strings behind the scenes, and none of them dared meet with me. That was when I truly tasted the coldness of the world. My younger sister, Serena, finally rushed back from the border. Back when father was first taken, he had told her not to tell me. But with so much time passed, and his military authority already stripped, Serena couldn't hold it in anymore. After yet another failed attempt to get help, she turned to me in desperation. "Brother, you spent so long in the Crown Prince's manor. Can't we ask him for help? My expression darkened immediately. What for? You think the prince would help us? All we do is cause him more trouble. Serena looked at me, stunned. What's wrong with you? Why do you get angry every time someone brings him up? I turned my back to her. This is our family's problem. We'll fix it ourselves. After she left, guilt gnawed at me. I regretted saying those words. It had already been a month since I left him. What was I still so afraid of? Afraid of getting involved with him again. And yet, I couldn't stop thinking about him. Fortunately, a breakthrough came. A senior official finally agreed to take Serena and me to visit our father in prison. To our surprise, father wasn't suffering the way we feared. In fact, he looked no different than he had at the border. Calm, steady, composed. He said gently, "Don't trouble yourselves on my behalf. This isn't something either of you can resolve. There's already someone advocating for me. If all goes well, I might be released soon." I was stunned. "I've already visited every one of your old comrades. Who would step in to help now?" Father looked at me for a long moment before sighing. "Don't ask. Just take Serena and leave. The Emperor is bedridden with illness, and the court is in chaos. Keeping yourself safe is the most important thing now." I recognized the look in his eyes and didn't press further. We left after that. Court unrest? Right. During all my desperate visits. I had heard whispers that the Emperor had taken seriously ill and no one was allowed to see him. And Cassian? What had happened to him? I began to casually ask around about the Crown Prince's condition. Since our separation, the Prince's manor had reportedly been attacked by assassins. Cassian was seriously wounded. Lady Wen Xinyan, daughter of Censor Wen, had frequently visited him afterward to nurse him back to health. People said they looked like a perfect match. At a recent royal banquet, Cassian brought her as his companion. I listened quietly to the rumors, feeling nothing in particular. If he had found happiness, that was good. And yet there was a strange heaviness in my chest I couldn't shake. Another month passed. Father was finally declared innocent and released. However, his military command was never restored. Still, I was content just to have him home. But I couldn't help asking, why did the Right Chancellor suddenly let you go? Father hesitated for a long moment before speaking. Sebastian, though the Crown Prince asked me not to tell you, the truth is, he made a deal with the Right Chancellor to save me. I froze. What kind of deal? He shook his head. I don't know. But the Drake family owes the prince a great debt now. That much is certain. Back at the prince's manor, Cassian had asked me to trust him. He had begged me to believe in him. Just once. And I truly thought he was just trying to protect himself. But in the end, he had protected me. He'd protected my family. And now I owed him more than I could ever repay. Even though my father was released without charges, the ordeal had taken its toll. He was no longer young, and he couldn't take any more of this. As a gesture of apology, the Emperor assigned me a ceremonial post at the border. It had an impressive title, but no real authority. He claimed it was a reward, saying the valiant general of Xinyan had served the Empire well and now deserved a life of peace. We all knew whose idea it really was, the Right Chancellor's. The night before we were set to leave the capital, the palace hosted a farewell banquet. The Emperor was too ill to attend. It was Cassian who arranged everything. And there he was. At his side stood Wen Xinyan, gently linking arms with him, quietly pouring his wine and serving his food, every bit the picture of a perfect crown princess. She was doing all the things I had never done. The more I watched, the more uncomfortable I became. Others had noticed too. Whispered conversations floated around me. The censor's daughter really suits the crown prince. That general's daughter before, too fierce, not gentle enough. I even saw the prince serving her food once. Quiet. Her brother is right there. But yeah, I heard the prince divorced her to avoid getting dragged down by her father's scandal. People just want to protect themselves, after all. The rage that surged in me nearly made me reach for my sword. I wanted to slice out their wagging tongues. Cassian wasn't protecting himself. I was the one who asked for the separation. But what right did I have to speak now? I forced myself to look away. We were like two ships, briefly passing each other on opposite currents. After that one crossing, we were sailing in different directions. The connection we had, gone like it never existed. Cassian raised a glass to me and offered polite words. I replied just as formally. No one around us would have guessed what we had once shared. As the banquet ended and I prepared to leave, I stopped him. Thank you, Your Highness, for saving my father. He looked slightly surprised, then offered a faint smile. It was nothing. Take care on your journey back to the border. That was all. After everything, those teasing words, the closeness, the intimacy, it ended with just, take care. I nodded. I had brought this upon myself. Once we returned, I drowned myself in wine to dull the ache. Back at the border, all those absurd memories and emotions, what did they have to do with me anymore? I didn't even know how many jars of wine I had gone through before Serena finally lost her patience. Are you insane? You already drank at the palace, and you're still going? Sebastian, you've been acting so strange lately. Are you heartbroken or something? I groaned and shoved her away. Don't be ridiculous. Just give me the wine. She clicked her tongue. Look at you. Pathetic. Do you even recognize yourself? What happened to the decisive, bold, fearless younger general I used to know? I blinked, sobering up just a little. What are you trying to say? Serena crossed her arms. You used to be brave. You didn't hesitate when you loved or hated someone. But look at you now. Just admit it. Who's the girl you've fallen for? Then she suddenly gasped and covered her mouth. Wait, no way. It's him, isn't it? Panic shot through me. No, of course not. Don't say nonsense. She raised an eyebrow, smirking. I didn't even say a name. But wow, brother, the guilt on your face just gave everything away. So who are you thinking about? I said nothing. But honestly, just moments ago I had been remembering Cassian's smile as he pulled me into his arms, whispering, My dear consort, your waist is so slender. Damn it. We had just finished packing and were preparing to leave the city. But that afternoon the gates were suddenly sealed. No one was allowed in or out. Then, just as night began to fall, the news hit us like a thunderclap. The emperor had passed away, and immediately after, word spread like wildfire. The right chancellor had accused the crown prince of treason, claiming he forced the emperor's death in an attempted coup. Troops were already marching toward the eastern palace. My father's brow furrowed deeply when he heard the news. This isn't good, he muttered. The crown prince is in real danger this time. It turned out, in order to secure my father's release, Cassian had handed over the command token for the Eastern Palace guards to the right chancellor. That had been the price. My voice trembled. Why didn't you tell me this sooner? The prince didn't even have military power to begin with. That token was his last defense. How could he hand it over when everyone knows the chancellor has been after the throne for years? My father shook his head. Even if he hadn't handed it over, it wouldn't have made a difference. My troops are stuck at the border, and the chancellor holds power over the three main armies. The regional commanders will stay neutral until the dust settles. No one wants to be the first to move. This time, it really comes down to fate. He let out a long, weary sigh. The setting sun cast a warm light on his weathered face and graying beard, making everything seem even more hopeless. I turned and started walking away. He called after me in alarm. Where are you going? I didn't look back. To repay a debt. I knew I was heading into a storm, and I might not make it out alive. But I didn't care. I couldn't just let him face it alone. Wait! My father tossed something to me, a small, unfamiliar command token. I caught it midair and looked at it in confusion. What's this? He smiled faintly, his eyes glinting with old cunning. They stripped me of my official command? So what? 20 years ago, I saved General Chen's life. He gave me this token. If I ever needed to mobilize troops, I could use it to call on his forces. It's yours now. I saluted him with a sharp nod. Understood. I rode out immediately, borrowing a small detachment of troops, and rushed to the Eastern Palace. Just as I feared, it was completely surrounded. I ordered the soldiers to break through the blockade, carving a bloody path forward. Then I broke off alone and charged ahead on horseback. But something felt strange. There weren't as many enemy soldiers inside as I expected. The palace guards seemed completely unaware of the battle outside. It was as if they'd been cut off from the world. And then, just as I burst through the last gate, I saw something that stunned me. The right chancellor was on his knees, face ashen and drenched in sweat, as if all hope had been crushed. Cassian stood tall, sword drawn, pointing it directly at the man's throat. Nearby, Xinyan had been tied up, sobbing on the ground, desperately kowtowing and begging for mercy. Through the chaos, Cassian looked up, and our eyes met. What was going on? He gave me a small, knowing smile and raised his right hand. In it was a brilliant golden object, gleaming in the torchlight. Suddenly, a rebel general roared and lunged at Cassian with his sword raised high. Without thinking, I hurled my spear with all my strength. It flew through the air like lightning, straight through the traitor's chest. Blood exploded from the wound as the man collapsed, lifeless. Cassian finally told me everything. A few days ago, while the Emperor lay on his deathbed, he secretly summoned Cassian to the palace in the middle of the night. There, he handed him a final imperial decree, a will of succession. The event was meant to be top secret, and by the next day all the eunuchs present that night had been silenced permanently. But somehow, the right chancellor found out. Not only did he learn of the will, he also ordered Wen Xinyan to steal it and alter its contents. Turns out, Wen Xinyan had been his spy all along. She had been planted at the Eastern Palace under the guise of a loyal attendant. Her sole purpose was to monitor everything Cassian did. The Chancellor believed he had everything under control. With a forged will in hand, he could accuse the Crown Prince of treason and rally the court to his side. Holding what everyone believed was the Emperor's decree, he mobilized the 3 armies, locked down the capital, and sealed the inner palace. What he didn't know was that Cassian had been suspicious of Wen Xinyan for a long time. Back when the 3-eyed tiger attacked me, Cassian had been baffled that I was the only one hurt. Later, he discovered a strange scented pouch in my discarded clothes. When he gave it to the tiger again, it went mad. He still didn't know how it worked, but of everyone who had touched me that day, only Wen Xinyan had pulled on my sleeve. After our annulment, Cassian accepted her affections, not out of love, but to see what she was up to. The decree? Cassian had let her steal it on purpose, because what the Emperor had actually given him that night wasn't a will at all. It was the Tiger Tally, the royal military command token that gave him the right to summon all troops across the Empire. That gleaming object he raised just moments ago, that was it. So while the Chancellor was mobilizing his forces, he didn't realize he was marching against the one man with the true imperial authority. Once Cassian revealed the Tiger Tally, the tide turned instantly. The rebel troops surrendered, the Chancellor and his men were arrested, and the coup collapsed on the spot. By the time I arrived, it was already over. As I stood outside the Eastern Palace, another squad of soldiers rode up. I turned to check who it was. It was Serena, my sister. She had brought her own troops from the border when she heard I had charged into the palace alone, thinking she'd need to rescue me. She frowned and folded her arms. "Seriously, Sebastian? What exactly were you planning to do?" I rubbed the back of my neck awkwardly and turned to Cassian. "Well, since everything's fine now, I'll just take my leave." Before I could move, a pair of arms suddenly wrapped around my waist from behind. "And where do you think you're going, my dear consort?" My eyes widened. Serena looked like her soul was about to leap out of her body. "Wait, what? You two are? You know what? Never mind, I'm out of here." And with that, she vanished like smoke in the wind. I whipped around, flustered. "Let go of me. What are you doing?" Cassian spoke softly behind me. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you everything. I didn't want the annulment, but at the time I wasn't confident I could protect you, so I had to let you go." He added quickly, "Nothing ever happened between me and Wen Xinyan. That was all just part of the plan." I scoffed. "Why are you telling me this? It's none of my business." "Really not your business?" I hesitated. "Well, maybe not entirely." His breath ghosted against my ear. I could feel the sincerity in every word. "Sebastian, I missed you." And just like that, my heart fell silent. Months apart, and not a day passed when I hadn't missed him too. Cassian continued, "My feelings haven't changed. If the only version of me you loved was the girl named Xinyan, if you still can't accept the real me, I'll let you go. I won't stop you. I just need to know your answer." How could I possibly say no? Ever since I left, the one face that haunted me in dreams was always his. Past or present, he was always the one I cared about. I took a deep breath and finally found the courage to speak my heart. Softly, I said, "If I didn't care about you, why would I come back to save you?" I felt his arms suddenly tighten around me. There was nothing more to say. No more doubts. No more distance. Just us. Cassian didn't ascend the throne. Instead, he passed the empire to his younger brother. He said his brother was ambitious, decisive, and born with the makings of a true ruler. Cassian never wanted to be emperor. He was tired of palace intrigue and endless scheming. From now on, all he wanted was to live a peaceful life by my side. Only later did I find out just how cunning this man really was. He had predicted that the right chancellor would stage a coup the night the emperor died. But here's the thing. The chancellor never ordered the city gates closed. Cassian did. He had them sealed just to make sure that before I could leave the capital, I'd hear news of the danger he was in. He gambled everything on whether or not I would come for him. And while the whole situation was stacked in his favor, the moment I showed up, he knew he'd already won. Shameless. Scheming. Absolutely disgraceful. And yet, I stayed by his side anyway. As for my sister Serena, she fell in love with the wild beauty of the borderlands. Cassian entrusted her with command of the military. She became the first female general in the history of the Empire. It had been her dream since childhood, and now it was finally fulfilled. The only downside? She hated coming back to the capital for her official reports. Serena stood in front of us, deadpan as ever. So, this year's supply usage exceeded the average by several hundred units. I hope the court can allocate the... Cassian interrupted with a dramatic groan. Beloved, my back still hurts. Next time, could you be a little more gentle? My face turned beet red. Can you not say that in front of my sister? What is wrong with you? Cassian chuckled softly. What? Serena's not an outsider. Here, darling, want a grape? Serena stared at us, face dark with rage. She finally snapped and smacked the report scroll right onto our heads. Enough already, you shameless lovebirds. One more honeymoon moment and I swear I'll burn down this entire palace. In the end, though, we all got what we wanted. Cassian got freedom, Serena got glory, and me, I got him. The end.